Welcome to EPG Pathshala. This is Shutapa Sinha, Associate Professor in the Department of Islamic History and Culture, University of Calcutta, Kolkata. And the paper of today's discussion is under Indian polity, and the particular module that we are going to discuss is the administrative reforms of Alauddin Khalji. In the first lesson under this Indian polity, particularly under the polity of Delhi Sultanate, we have learned about the kingship theory of Ghiyasuddin Balban, and today we are going to study about another important sultan of this period of the Delhi Sultanate. He is Alauddin Khalji, and the learning objectives today is a brief introduction of Khalji dynasty. Then we will know about Alauddin Khalji and his time a little bit. But the main focus of today's discourse is administrative reforms and other reforms. What are the measures that have been taken for administrative reforms and allied aspects of administration, and views and assessment of the historians about Alauddin Khalji's rule. Now we can have a quick look at the map of the India during Alauddin Khalji's period, dynasty, which is definitely bigger. The expansion of the kingdom is bigger than what we have seen for Ghiyasuddin Balban's period. Now just have a look of a portrait of Sultan Alauddin Khalji and his expedition to Deogiri. Actually we all know that Alauddin Khalji is the first sultan who conquered and looted part of South India, that is in Deccan, Maharashtra region of present day, that is the Deogiri, and looted the entire state and came back. And after that particular plunder of South, the number of coins production by Alauddin Khalji increased in a huge number. He was a prolific issuer of coins, and we have seen that he struck coins in copper, coins in Bilon, which is an alloy metal, and coins in silver, and occasionally, very occasionally, we found his coins in gold. So there is a kind of estimation that we can make that he and his economic system of his state was quite healthy. Now we are coming to the brief introduction of the Khalji rule, which was from 1290 to 1320, a very brief period of 30 years, which witnessed significant changes in the socio-economic and administrative structure of Delhi Sultanate. The Khaljis also broadened the social base of the ruling class. Barani says that with the accession of the Khaljis, the empire passed from the hands of the Turkish to the noble of Delhi, were struck by admiration and amazement at seeing the Khaljis occupying the throne of the Turks. And then we can have a very brief introduction about Khalji, it's Alauddin Khalji and his times. Jalaluddin Khalji, the founder of the dynasty, actually did not follow a policy of narrow exclusivism. He introduced a state which was based fundamentally on the goodwill and support of the people from all communities. Unlike the previous ruler, Ghiyasuddin Balban, we have seen that he never allowed any common people in any kind of administrative activities of his domain. Jalaluddin Khalji's nephew and son-in-law was Alauddin Khalji, who ascended the throne after assassinating his uncle in 1296 AD. He continued the legacy in conquering states and territories, expanding for next 20 years. But as we have already mentioned, that today we will focus on the administrative reforms of Alauddin Khalji, because it will it was definitely a new administrative reform which was introduced by him, and he did not accept Jalaluddin's theory of benevolence and humanitarianism. He adhered more to Balban's theory, that is, the theory of kingship with much amendment. He was the first Muslim ruler to successfully defeat and conquer southern parts of India. And in fact, as we are told, that it was actually the Warangal part, the Kakatiya dynasty, who used to rule in present-day Warangal, and as we all know, that the famous Kohinoor diamond was looted particularly from that area. Alauddin Khalji realized that a strong centralized administration is a necessity to set the budding Sultanate rule on a concrete ground. He made some kind of reforms, administrative reforms, which paved the way for his economic reforms as well as military conquest and other aspects of his reign. Now, the administration that we are going to discuss can be divided into two parts. One is centralized administration and the other is provincial administration. So far as the centralized administration is concerned, Alauddin attempted to translate his theory of kingship. He was there to rule through the administrative practice. His word was law, an absolute despot, and possessed unlimited powers. All powers of administrative affairs of the state were only centralized in him. In the words of Ashraf, the Sultan of Delhi was in theory an unlimited despot and by no law, subject to no material check and guided by no will except his own. From this kind of quotation, we may easily understood that though Alauddin Khilji amended administration from the time of Ghiyasuddin Balban, but he has followed the theory of kingship of where he was a total despot in toto. In this regard, we can also have some other views of the historians, and where we can see that the administration was actually free from the influence of the ulema, because Alauddin Khilji thought that so far as the administrative part is concerned, ulema, the views of the ulema are not necessarily to be taken into consideration. Regarding this, Dr. Ishwari Prasad says, Alauddin was opposed to the interference of the ulema in matters of state. Barani also stated that Alauddin was convinced that matters concerning the state and administration were independent of the rules and orders of the Sharia. And according to Alauddin himself, quote, I do not know what is lawful or unlawful according to Sharia. Whatever considered necessary for the state or for its welfare, I decree, unquote. That means Alauddin actually tried to impose whatever was necessary for the benevolence and welfare of the state. In this regard, we may keep in mind that to the extent he can even ignore the rule of Sharia if necessary and if it is for the welfare of the state. Role of ministers. The Sultan appointed trusted ministers to assist him in the running of administration. In fact, next to the Sultan was the Wazir post, who was both a civil and military officer, and he used to have he was quite powerful among the ministers. We can also mention about Amir-i-Kohi, who was in charge of agriculture, Shahana-e-Mandi, who was in charge of the market, Diwana-e-Ribat, who was looking after the markets, and so on and so forth. Now we are coming to the system of the provincial administration, where we can have a look of the provinces. What are the provinces which were under the control of Alauddin Khalji, and there are almost 11 provinces, namely Gujarat, Multan and Sewan, Dipalpur, Samana and Sunam, Dhar and Ujjain, Jain, Chittor and Chanderi, Badaun, Awadh and Kara. And obviously there are the in charge of each and every province who were known as the governors deputed by the Sultan himself, and they were almost like the kings in miniature. They had to obey the orders of the Sultan. They had all executive, legislative and judicial powers. Besides these provinces, there were some other smaller states and towns, and Alauddin used to keep a close watch over local and village administration by himself. So far as the administration is concerned, we will also need to look at the revenue reforms, because without the proper revenue system, a state cannot run in its full strength. So, in the first revenue regulation, which is called Zabita, we find that it was concerned about the measurement of the land. There were different kind of units of measurement of land, and namely we may mention that Biswa, which is actually 1/20th of a bigha, and Paimash, which is a unit of land tax measurement. The first one, Biswa, is the unit of measurement of land, and Paimash is the unit of measurement of the land tax. How much tax one has to pay for a particular amount or particular measurement of land. Interestingly, Khut, the peasants, Mukaddam and the Chaudhuris, all of them had to pay the equal amount of land tax as of the other people. House tax, that is called Ghari, and the pasture tax, that is Chari, were also imposed on the agrarian population. To support his market control system, revenue was mostly collected in kind, so that people cannot hoard the crop or the production to raise the price. A new department called Diwane Mustakharaz was founded. Kharaz is the tax, and we have also seen that there are some other kind of posts have been introduced to make the revenue system more unique. They are called Ghanima and Khum. After revenue system, another essential part of administration is judicial administration, and the Sultan was the fountain of the justice, that we all know, but next to him was Qazi ul Quzat, that is the Lord or Chief Justice. Justice was administered by the Qazis, who were the junior officers in the provinces, and several severe punishments were in vogue during the reign of Alauddin Khalji. Be it a wealthy person, be it a pious person, nobody could actually escape the justice, and mutilation of limbs was very common. Then another interesting system which was very pertinent to a centralized administration, what Alauddin Khalji actually wanted to have in his kingdom, that is a system of espionage, a very efficient system of espionage. It was organized by Alauddin in a very systematic and effective manner. Bari-de-Khash, there is a post called Bari-de-Khash, who was actually the head of the intelligence department, and under him the spies or the Barids were appointed in different parts of the empire. But it is important to note that the Barids or the spies all are actually directly accountable or answerable to the Sultan himself. They used to send their information separately to the Sultan, and Bari-de-Khas, or the head of the intelligence system, he used to send his report separately to the sultans. So thereby there was a very impartial system of espionage, and so that the sultan could keep his direct control and very efficient control over the entire empire. According to Ziauddin Barani, no one could starve without Alauddin's knowledge, and whatever happened in the houses of the Maliks and Amirs, officers and great men was communicated to the Sultan directly. And there is another kind of measure which also made Alauddin bit unpopular, but it was also for the cause of the welfare of the state, that is controlling the power of the nobles. Alauddin did not allow all kind of leniency or any kind of leniency to his nobles. He always had a very good control over them, and as historian Satish Chandra has mentioned, to quote, the nobles were forbidden to associate with each other or hold convivial parties. In fact, even for forming marriage alliances, they had to seek the permission of the Sultan. So we can easily understand that they don't have actually any kind of independence, even if it is their private affairs. And thereby Alauddin could put all kind of control on the get-togethers and functions of the nobles. He had made them to stop drinking in the parties. Even the social intercourse and the marriages were restricted among the nobles. Naturally, there was the cause of there are a lot of causes of revolt among the nobles, and for this kind of action that has been taken by Sultan, and Sultan also taken some kind of measure to check the power of the nobles. Like he has identified different causes that led to the revolt among the nobles, like inefficiency in spy system, huge wealth in the hands of the nobles, frequent drinking parties, and social intercourse and intermarriages, which Alauddin considered as the cause of their revolt. And he has taken kind of strict measures towards these loopholes, like engagement of more efficient spy system and confiscation of jagirs given to the nobles for some reason or the other, so that no surplus money would be there in the hand of the nobles. Prohibition of the sale and use of wine and any kind of other intoxicating drugs. Restriction on social gathering and intermarriages among the nobles were also a very useful method that Alauddin tried to implement among the nobles to control them or to control their power. Now we may have a look into the administrative measures for the market control. We have to keep it in mind, this is the administrative measures to control the market, which is not the policy of price control policy of Alauddin that we are talking about. This is only for the controlling of the market. Alauddin appointed 3 types of officials to impose control over the market. Shahnai-e-Mandi, who was actually in charge of the grain market; Mandi, who used to report on the quality of the grain, and he was an intelligence officer. He was actually always keeping an eye on the quality of the grain, that we today call as a quality control measure of the food or any kind of crop that was produced during the day. And Munhian, that is secret spies, who may be compared to the secret service police of today. Another important part of administration of Alauddin Khalji was organization of the postal system. He established a proper postal system for establishing a regular contact with various parts of the empire. In his book Dr. H.C. Verma mentioned that the Sultan Alauddin posted several horsemen and clerks in the news posts so that the posts would be more, would be quicker in those days. From the accounts of Ibn Battuta and Barani, we came to know that postal system was in good condition during Alauddin's reign. So far as the social mobility is concerned in the administration or under the Sultanate polity of Delhi, we may say that was started with, of course, with Alauddin's predecessor, but it was very much in vogue during the Alauddin's time. As we have already seen that for the sake of the benevolence and welfare of the society, he can go to any extent. He can also, he has given importance to the non-Turks people if they were efficient. He did not hesitate to give any kind of post, important post or high-ranking post in the administration. There are non-Turks where the non-Turks therefore were no longer kept back during Alauddin Khalji's time. He chose and promoted many non-Turks to the top position in his government, and namely we can have Jafar Khan, Nusrat Khan and Malik Kafur. Malik Nayak, a Hindu who had been appointed as governor of Samana and Sunam, commander of an army with Muslim officers which inflicted crushing defeat on the Mongol attacks. A large number of Indian Muslims also formed a part of his army. So after discussing all these major reforms that were introduced by Alauddin Khalji during the very beginning of 14th century, we can now have a look about the views and assessment of the historians regarding Alauddin Khalji's administrative reform or administrative system. It is very apparent that Alauddin Khalji was a strict and efficient administrator following the path of his predecessor Ghiyasuddin Balban. Still, he has drawn attractions of many historians, and we can have a quick look of their assessment regarding his achievements and contribution towards the medieval history of India. First we can start with what Firista have said about Alauddin. He has praised Alauddin's law and order as, within quotation, the traveller slept secure on the highways and the merchant carried his commodities in safety from the Sea of Bengal to the mountains of Kabul and from Telangana to Kashmir. So this is virtually what Ferista have mentioned about the security system and very good and well controlled administrative system during Alauddin Khalji's. People can move to anywhere without any kind of fear in their mind, and he has also mentioned the limitation or the boundary of the empire, that is from Sea of Bengal in east to the mountains of Kabul in the west, and from Telangana in south to Kashmir in the north. Modern historian like A.L. Srivastava concludes that a balanced view of Alauddin's work and achievement must give him a high place among the rulers of Delhi during the medieval age. Like Elphinstone mentioned, the rule of Alauddin was glorious and he was a successful monarch who exhibited a just exercise of his power. Most of these historians actually found the positive side of Alauddin Khalji's administration, as he has recovered or retrieved the Sultanate from a complicated situation. Stanley Lenpool also commented that though he might be wrong-headed and disdainful of the law, but Alauddin was a man of determination, and that determination made his time or administration a strong base in Indian history. K. S. Lal states that from nothingness he rose to be one of the greatest rulers of medieval India. So we can have several other views of the historians, but it will be a kind of exaggeration sometimes, or it will be a repetition. However, we can also mention about what S.R. Sharma writes, that Alauddin was the first Muslim emperor of India. During his reign, for the first time, the present Muslim flag dominated over the whole country, from the Himalayas to Cape Comorin and from sea to sea. We can also have a look at what Vincent Smith wrote about Alauddin, that he was particularly savage tyrant with very little regard for justice. His reign was exceedingly disgraceful in many respects. So these are the kind of criticism that was also Alauddin deserved because of some of his activities. From the above discussion, we can also now have a kind of recapitulation what we have discussed here today. Alauddin Khalji possessed not only the qualities of a born military commander, but also those of a great civil administrator. Many of his reforms were later on adopted by the rulers like Sikandar Shah Lodi, like Sher Shah, and even by Akbar, the great Mughal Empire. When he ascended the throne, he found that the Sultanate of Delhi was not in a consolidated situation. The main cause of this was the corrupt administrative machinery, and that is why Alauddin Khalji put much stress upon a centralized administrative system. The departments of military, police and revenue were completely overhauled. To root out the evils of bribery, dishonesty and malingering among the government officials, Alauddin Khalji increased their pay reasonably. Those who still persisted in corrupt practices were given very severe punishment. Jagirdari and unlawful privileges of the Jamindars were totally abolished. He established a very efficient espionage system, though there were some lacunas, but spies and informers were present in each and every corner of his vast empire. So, we now may conclude by saying that Alauddin Khalji marked the beginning of the new administrative system in the beginning of the 14th century, which later became the model for the medieval Indian administration. Thank you very much.